Election day is just one day away. Joining us to discuss is Madeline Summerville, a Democratic strategist, a speechwriter, and attorney. And we have Jason Meister. He's the founder of Last Stand Political Action Committee and advisory board member of Donald J. Trump for President. So great to have you guys in studio. We talked a number of times, Madeline, online, but we've actually never met. This is our first time, so it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much.
And if I may, I'll start with you, Madeline. So we're seeing that turnout for in-person voting for the NYC mayor race is much higher than previous years. So we're seeing a boost in younger voters, potentially helping Mamdani. But on the other hand, higher turnout could help Cuomo. Some polls showing older voters showing more support for him, and they usually turn out at higher rates. So what are you looking at in terms of the variables here that could ultimately decide the outcome of this race?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you think about the different generations of voters. A lot of the folks that we know came out from Mamdani in the primary, right, were going to be people who were especially motivated. So, and those are the folks that turn out to vote in primaries in general. And there are many people, like the folks who were recently participating in the protests, who are younger people who might not make it to the polls as easily. Actually, Republican voters tend to make it to the polls much more so. Older voters who tend to skew Republican tend to make it out. So I'm interested to see how Gen Z is actually going to turn out here, because I think we may have overestimated how much they would turn out for Mamdani.
Okay, so Jason, what are the variables you're looking at? Because we've got recent polls that's showing that potentially the lead that Mamdani has is narrowing.
Yeah, look, I think what's happening is that these polls have missed a very significant anti-Mamdani vote. And I think that vote is now you're going to start to see that vote in this Atlas Intel poll that just came out 1 o'clock today, showing that Andrew Cuomo is within 4 points of Mamdani, which is within the margin of error in that poll. And so I think there's a significant anti-Mamdani vote, very similar to the closet Trump vote in the 2015 or 2016 and 2024 presidential elections. I think there's an anti-Mamdani vote that has been hidden from these polls. And I think that is going to show up very significantly going to Election Day.
I think that's right, too.
So going off of his point then, if you look at prediction markets like Polymarket, right, it has Mamdani over 90%, I think 95% when I checked this morning. So are you looking at that? Do you think Mamdani has this in the bag, or is there a chance for Cuomo?
I still think Mamdani has it in the bag. I just think it's going to be a much closer race than we realized. Do you disagree?
I do. I disagree slightly. Mm-hmm. I think that if you look at the Polymarket polling for bettors in New York City, Cuomo is up by 11 points. Mm. So that's a very significant swing towards Cuomo for people that are here with businesses, homes, that live in New York City. That's where Cuomo is doing much significantly higher. If you look at the Polymarket polls of the greater country and world, yes, Mamdani is winning very significantly, but I think it's the New York City specific voters where he's winning, where Cuomo's winning.
Okay, so can I ask you how you feel about Cuomo's chances? In your mind, what is the likelihood that he can overcome Zohran Mamdani?
Again, I think that's going to really base its foundation on the anti-Mamdani vote. However, what I've been doing this election cycle is targeting registered Republicans who typically and historically don't vote in municipal elections, but vote in federal and state elections. Mm-hmm. Those Republicans, of which there are about 598,000 voters, if we can swing about 55,000 of those 598,000 voters from Curtis Sliwa to Andrew Cuomo, Cuomo can win this election. And what I think President Trump has done in the last 24 hours, he was on 60 Minutes last night, and he specifically said that a bad Democrat is better than a jihadi communist. That's what Mamdani is. And so if those voters, if these Republican voters come out for Andrew Cuomo because they're afraid of what Mamdani will do to destroy the city, then I think Cuomo will win.
Okay, I do have a follow-up to that, but I saw Madeline chuckling there. Maybe you have a response.
Sure, and I agree with everything you said up until the jihadi communist comment. But I think what you said prior to that was just the facts in terms of those of us who do local elections understand that these races can be swung on a certain amount and that the calculations that have been made up till now are only based on what we've seen in the past. And it's difficult to extrapolate and make those expectations for the future. So it's just a fact that if you take those 55,000 and swing them, that it's possible and that it could happen. I absolutely believe that. I think that there's been a lot of propaganda against Mamdani. As a Jewish person myself, I've been in a lot of conversations with different people in the community about it, but it shows that apparently 67% of young Jewish folks that are around my age in New York City are voting for him. I think he's a human rights advocate, and I think that there's been some propaganda that has been quite negative that might not be true. So,
yeah, anything to say?
Look, I think that many New York voters have been through some pretty bad mayors. For example, Mayor de Blasio was incompetent, is how I would put it. But I think that the electorate this time around understands that this isn't really that we're dealing with a candidate in Mamdani that's incompetent, but is going to destroy the city by design. He's a left-wing revolutionary, and what he wants is to empty the prisons, defund the police, have city-run grocery stores. This is antithetic to America. This is antithetic to New York City. It is antithetic to capitalism. It is not what this country was founded upon. It is not what this city is based upon. And I think that many people in this election cycle realize, and Republicans in particular, usually vote for the loser in the mayoral race in New York City. And then they pick up their bootstraps the next day, they go to work, and they hope for a better outcome in the next election cycle. Here, I think in this election cycle, they understand the gravity of their vote. And the fact is that this is going to change New York City forever. And I think that they realize what the threat that they're faced with. And that's why I think that the anti-Mamdani vote going to tomorrow is going to be very significant.
That's 100% right, in my view. That's 100% right. Absolutely. I mean, I disagree with his judgment about Mamdani, but I absolutely agree that that's exactly how the dynamics work.
All right, so let me get to that follow-up that I was talking about earlier. How much in common do you think Cuomo and Sliwa supporters have politically? Is there any overlap? Because could Sliwa supporters vote for Cuomo depending on how much overlap there is or how much there isn't?
Look, I think that Sliwa voters and Cuomo voters have the same political enemy, which is Mamdani. And I think that they see that the same way. The question is whether Sliwa voters understand at this point in time that the math just simply isn't there. I have no issue with Sliwa. I have respect for the man. I think he loves his city.
I agree.
I think he's a good man. I think he, again, respects the city. However, the math simply isn't behind him. And that's why President Trump was very direct to his voters last night on 60 Minutes saying that a bad Democrat is better than a communist. Now, remember, Mamdani identifies himself as a socialist. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think for the purpose of New York City voters, there's really a distinction between democratic socialism and communism. And so I think that they're going to vote against that.
If I could just address that.
Yeah.
So I think that when it comes to Mamdani being an enemy or against the city in some way, I think the only faction of society that he's against is the 1%. The goal, right, is to tax the top 1% an extra 2%, similar to what's been done in New Jersey, so that they can fund the programs that he wants to have, so that people who are living in New York City, who have been priced out of their homes because of price fixing that's gone on, and actually President Trump is doing a very good job working on antitrust cases against that because of the price fixing, right? There's been wage fixing that's gone on. People have been unfairly priced out of living there. He's trying to reset the scale. He's trying to rebalance things. So the only people who are threatened by him are the people who tend to have more of a voice, who are the top 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do agree that Mamdani in his campaign has correctly diagnosed a problem, which is affordability. That is the issue that he is completely campaigning on. What I have a difference of with Mamdani, and what I think voters will have a difference of with him tomorrow, is his prescription. His prescription to the problem being affordability is deadly. And that's why I think New Yorkers are going to come out against him tomorrow in droves, because it's not the diagnosis. He's absolutely right. Affordability is an issue in New York City. The problem is his prescription to it is deadly. And that's where I think Cuomo will supersede him, will excel. He has a track record as governor of the state. He's done some pretty good things. He's governed from the middle in the past. And I think he won't devastate and destroy the city the way that Mamdani will. So I think that there's going to be, again, a significant anti-Mamdani vote. So,
Madeline, I'd like you to respond to his point saying that his policies, Mamdani's policies, are deadly. Because I would argue, I mean, it makes sense, right? If somebody is working, they deserve to get paid. I mean, nothing is free. If you're providing a service, you need to pay the person providing the service. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just common sense. So where is the funds going to come from?
Yeah, so I'll just elaborate a little bit more on the policy that he's trying to adopt from New Jersey. So it was basically you tax the top 1% 2% more, and those are the funds, and that ends up factoring into a tremendous amount of money, which would be able to cover childcare and buses and perhaps trains for people to. And it really just facilitates them getting to and from work, right? The theory behind it is that the people who are in the top 1% are the employers, by and large, and they have not been engaging in the kind of wage, I guess, growth that would need to accommodate for inflation. And so and I think the reason why Mamdani has been so successful isn't just because he's going to make everything free. I think it's because he gave people a vision of what their future would look like, and that where their life is easier, where their life is an easier one to live, where getting to and from work doesn't cost them an extra $150 a month, where they don't have to spend their whole paycheck in childcare. And the reason why the Democrats have failed in the past is because they haven't had a vision. They haven't put people in a place where they could see in their minds themselves in the future where it was easier. And I think that he's the first candidate to do that. I don't think that the Democratic Party is necessarily shifting way far left. I think that the Democrats now are where MAGA was 10 years ago. They're just desperate for something new, and a Democratic Socialist is the only thing on the menu.
Is it fair to tax the rich?
You have to tax everyone. I don't think you should disproportionately tax the rich. I think that you'll devastate employment in the city of New York. And, people say, well, we should raise the minimum wage. Well, what is the minimum wage in America? The minimum wage in America is $0. Because that's what you make when you don't have a job. And so the idea is, Mamdani can come up with all these great ideas, and he can say what he's going to do, and he's going to make the buses free, he's going to have city-run grocery stores, and he's going to tax the rich and the uber wealthy. At the end of the day, if every employer in this city leaves because of taxes and because they're getting penalized for having jobs and supporting these people's careers, they're just going to leave the city of New York, and there's not going to be any jobs. So I think that it's easy to say the things that you want to say, and everything's going to be free, and you're going to have free buses, and you're going to have free grocery stores, and you're going to have and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, if employers leave the city in droves, there will be no jobs, there will be no grocery stores, and there will be no employment.
Let's be clear, though. The only people that are going to be affected by this, and it's not like all the grocery stores are going to be free, right? There's a section, there's a part of it that's going to be impacted by this, so that the people who are hungry can eat, which I also agree is something that President Trump cares about. I think that if given the opportunity, that he would want to fund the issues that we're having right now with SNAP. But I digress. I think the thing that we need to remember here, though, in terms of especially like the rent freezes that he's been talking about, is that the amount of money that landlords are making already is a tremendous amount, right? They've already been engaging in, like, let's say if it's a bunch of apartment complexes, they've all agreed that they're going to charge people at the very top of what they could possibly afford. And if they all do it, right, and there's no competition with anybody being lower, then everyone has to pay a tremendous amount. That's the kind of activity that's been going on here. And so when the people who are the landlords, who are the 1%, say, how are we going to make money? It's like, you're already making a ton of money. We're just making it so that you can't keep extorting these people living in New York City.
Okay, let me ask you this. If we put a cap on how much money a person can make, whether it's a landlord or it's an entrepreneur or a business person, does that disincentivize innovation in a sense?
I think there's a difference in putting a cap on how much money someone can make and instituting an ethical regulation. I think the reason why I consider myself a Democrat is because I believe in regulating business, because I think that business unregulated naturally is unethical. I think that if you don't step in, like the natural consequence of business growth is that, especially because of the laws, the way that they're structured in the United States, is that they will do whatever they need to do in order to succeed, even if it means hurting people. And that's where I think government should come in and step in. So it's not necessarily putting a cap on it. It's just making sure that there's ethical behavior that exists in society.
Okay, Jason, if you have a response, I'd like to hear it, and then I would like to move the conversation on to the implications if Mamdani wins nationally and as well for the Democratic Party.
Sure. I mean, just quickly to address the last point, I think you cannot legislate markets. Markets are free. That's the best way to bring rents down, is to increase the supply. If there's higher demand, you need to increase the supply. The idea that a government official is going to legislate minimum wage or rents is ridiculous. I think it just destroys and decimates the industry. Now, as far as your last question about the implications from a general countrywide political atmosphere, I think that if Mamdani is successful in this election, you will see his playbook, his populist left-wing playbook, will be replicated in every major Democrat-run city, because he will become the poster child of the Democratic Party. I think you're already seeing the Democratic Party sort of position him in that way. If he is stopped here in New York City, which I hope he is, you will see that playbook of how to stop the DSAs and Democratic Socialists across every Democrat-run city. You'll see that playbook replicated across this country. So I believe that what's happening right here, right now in this city, in New York City, and what plays out tomorrow will have very, very significant impacts going forward in every state election.
Madeline, I saw you shaking your head.
Well, I think that your assessment is generally right. Like, everything that I've heard you say is correct. I just disagree with the underlying premise. I do think that the Democrats have looked at Mamdani and they've said, okay, so the issue is affordability. That's what we should have been talking about the whole time. And okay, this is what people want. They want free this, that, and everything else. I don't think that's it. I think that the reason why Mamdani's been so successful isn't because he's focused on affordability. I think that is the issue. But if that were the case, then Kamala Harris could have won by giving people $25,000 to buy their first home, right? There are lots of people who've made lots of promises. The deal is that he's authentic. The deal is that when he speaks, people believe him. And that is significant. That means something. But I still think that the Democrats will continue to misdiagnose how to be successful as a politician. And they'll say, okay, so we're going to do all the things that happened here in New York City. So I don't think you're wrong. I think that is something that could happen, that could follow up. But I also think that New Yorkers are brave. I think that they vote differently than the rest of the country. And they tend to take bigger steps than perhaps a more conservative state, even if they are liberal.
So to use your words, you said that could happen. Are you referring to that Mamdani could potentially become the face of the Democratic Party?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to piggyback on that, I think President Trump would love nothing more than for Mamdani to be the face of the Democratic Party going forward.
That's true.
And I think you wouldn't have a Mamdani if you didn't have such a successful President Trump presidency. I think that what's happened to the Democratic Party is they've gotten pushed like a feral animal into a corner of a room, and they're dying for some fresh ideas, some fresh blood, and Mamdani is what they're grabbing onto. I personally think that that's the wrong blood to grab onto, and I've made that point numerous times today in this interview, but I do think that he is an asset to Trump and MAGA, not a liability, from a national political standpoint.
So Madeline, do you think his policies, not specifically the freezing of rent or free bus fares, but the idea, the core theme of his policies, do you think that's going to be popular nationwide? I
do. I think that there's a faction that includes myself of Democrats who loved Bernie from the beginning, right? And it's not even the AOC aspect of it. I think that Bernie has become a figure who's like, much like Trump, has repeated his beliefs in a similar way over and over again, such that people can repeat them to each other and they believe it now. And I think that what he's advocated for is healthcare as a human right. What he's advocated for is being able to live and be successful in your society. And I think, and when you get down to it, right, there's two different ways to go about it if you're a Democrat versus a Republican. But when you have when you have people who are willing to take a major risk and do things an entirely different way, that usually doesn't come from Democrats. Usually the brave ones are the Republicans who are willing to engage in something. So then that speaks to the fact that Democrats really do feel like they're a feral animal backed into a corner and just want something different and are begging for something new.
All right, Jason, we're just about out of time. I started with her, so I'll end with you.
Yeah, look, I think going back to what I said earlier, I think we should all keep our eyes on the anti-Mamdani vote. I am no fan of Andrew Cuomo. I think he's a relic of the Democratic Party. Having said that, I think that his motives, his campaign, and everything that he stands for, I think we know where he governs. He will govern from the middle. I think that President Trump was very clear to Republican voters in the city of New York that a bad Democrat is better than a communist any day of the week. And I think that that's hopefully what's going to play out tomorrow in the election.
Well, all right, more agreements than I actually thought you guys would have in this conversation.
Yeah.
Overall, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.